Good morning. Welcome to the 24 hours of PASS, data security and data quality. We are excited you could join us today for Grant Fritchey's session, Protecting Production Data in Non-Production Environment. This 24 hours of PASS event consists of 24 consecutive live webinars delivered by expert speakers from the PASS community. The session will be recorded and posted online after the event. To access any on-demand sessions, please visit the URL and we'll send you later for all session links. My name is Vijay Chidambaram. I'm a senior database engineer at Irvine, Southern California. I have 10 years of experience on the SQL Server platform. I have few introductory slides before I hand over the reins to Grant. All right. Mainly technical assistance. If you require any technical assistance, please type in your question into the question panel located on the right side of your screen and someone will assist you. So this question pan is also where you can ask questions throughout the presentation. Feel free to enter your question at any time. Once we get to the Q&A portion of your sessions, I will read out your questions relevant to the topic loud to the speaker. You are able to zoom in on any presentation content by using the zoom button located on the top of your presentation window. Please note there will be a short evaluation at the end of the session. Your feedback is very essential and important for us to do it better. Please take a moment to complete it. So it will appear in your web browser. Thank you to our sponsors. I would like to take a moment to thank you, our sponsor Microsoft and Redgate. The staging of the 24 hours of PASS wouldn't be possible without their generous support, and they are the reason this event is available free of charge. Your poll will be appearing on your screen from Redgate's. Opt in to receive any information from our sponsor and you will have a chance to win $100 of Visa gift card. Redgate software makes ingeniously simple software used by over 650,000 IT professionals who work with SQL Server, .NET, Oracle. More than 100,000 companies use Redgate products, including 91% of the Fortune 100. Redgate's philosophy is to design highly usable, reliable tools which elegantly solve problems that developers and DBAs face every day. Check out the handout in the webinar control panel for more information. Make sure you explore everything else PASS has to offer for the data professionals. You can join local user group around the world, special interest groups, find free online resources through our Learning Center, and read up on the latest community news in the Connector newsletter. This 24 hours of PASS session is presented by today Grant Fritchey. Grant Fritchey is the SQL Server MEP with over 20 years of experience in IT, including time spent in support and development. He has worked with the SQL Server since 6.0 back in 1995, as well as serves as the current Executive Vice President on the PASS Board of Directors. All right, over to Grant.
Excellent. Thank you very much, PJ. That's great. All right, let's get going, people. So the goals of our session, basically, I want to talk to you about DevOps is really what we're talking about, but I want to talk to you about DevOps from the point of view of the poor people who are tasked with protecting production information. It is vital, really, that production information get protected as it moves away from your production environment. And so let's just kind of talk about it. Now, the whole thing with development and operations is it really does get to feel like trench warfare after a time. You get this sense that no one likes each other, that there's just this constant lobbing of shells across the no man's land, and every once in a while we go charging back or forth. Development tries to deploy something, and we beat them back off operations, or something along these lines. And the fact of the matter is that this is not conducive towards a common goal we have, and our common goal is very simple. We want to deploy high quality software for our business while protecting our production information. I mean, it's that simple. So enter DevOps. DevOps is our moment of peace. It's the willingness we have to accept the fact that we have a common goal, that we're not at war, that we are all on the same side, that we literally have to find mechanisms for communication. DevOps is that method of communication. It is very much an approach, a methodology, and most importantly, a method of communication to allow us to move seamlessly from a development environment into a production environment. You must start to approach this from the idea that we are all on the same side, that we all do have common goals. If not, you're going to continue in that trench warfare mindset, and it's just going to lead to inefficiencies and slow things down, and no one wants that. We want to deliver high quality software faster. I mean, it's just the nature of the modern age that you must do this kind of thing, and you can't ignore the fact that this is necessary for the business. Now, IT, it could be that you're in a company that the business is IT, but a lot of us, the majority of us, are supporting active businesses. It's mom and pop sales shops, it's large scale banks, it's investment banking firms, it's insurance companies, chemistry, all kinds of companies and organizations all have IT, but the goal is not IT in and of itself. Development is not the goal. Operations is not the goal. The business is the goal. And so we have DevOps as a mechanism for coming across and meeting together. There is, however, a bit of an issue. Database and DevOps frequently, it doesn't get along, right? It's not that there's anything wrong with DevOps and DevOps mechanisms. There's not that there's anything wrong with databases. It's just that, frankly, databases are hard. It's that whole thing of persistence, that whole thing of that database layer is sticking around. The data has to stick around. The information persists. You cannot simply drop and replace it like you can code. Now, I'm not saying code is easy, but there is a certain amount of deployment ease available in code that's non-existent in the database. You have to protect that stuff. And so it makes deployment and development harder. If we further toss in the idea of moving our data into non-production environments, things get really freaky. But it doesn't have to be this way. It is possible for database and DevOps to work together, to meet at common ground, to find mechanisms to get shiny and new so that we can actually, go on a nice crawl up the hill. Sorry, I really like Jeeps. Anyway, one of the first mechanisms you're going to hit when you start talking DevOps, and it's vital, it's very important, is the concept of shift left. Now, shift left is easy enough to understand. What it means is that we're going to move production-like environments to the left in our process. Now, let's just get it. This is a very, very simplistic, very simplified mechanism of deployment. Frankly, real deployments are circular. It's not a line. It's not a pipeline. It is literally a circle because you're going to be constantly delivering. You're going to be constantly deploying. But we're going to talk about this very simple mechanism. So if we're going from the left-hand side, database development, into our production system, production database, that's great. But from a DevOps standpoint, we need to shift left. And that means that our staging environment, our QA, performance testing, integration environments, our build environment, and as much as possible, our development environment itself need to mirror our production environment. Our production environment has to get moved to the left. Now, from a database standpoint, what does that mean? It means moving the data. So we're talking about moving some type of production data into our staging environment. some type of production data into our QA integration and performance testing environment. In other words, moving the data left as well as moving the environments and methodologies left. And the whole point here is that you want to fail early, often, and fast when you're doing development, right? You want to mess up in development, mess up at that first build, mess up during that first QA test, because then you get it fixed before you get anywhere near production. And that's the whole idea of shift left, is moving this stuff so that we can test and develop in a production-like environment, in a production-like method prior to getting to our production environment. We're practicing our deployments over and over again before we get anywhere near our production environment. And this acts as a mechanism of protection for our production environment. So DBAs out there, don't think about this as a problem. Think about this as a massive opportunity. This is a chance to improve the protection of your production systems. Now the thing is devs, they're not asking for much, right? All they want is the Earth, the Moon, and all the stars. I mean, it's not everything, it's just most of everything. And the issue that we're going to run into is that you just can't have it. I mean, I'm not trying to say no, I'm not being a DBA. I'm saying that there is an issue here. And the issue is that there are legal requirements that do not allow me to put production data in the hands of all my dev members. I just can't do it from a legal standpoint. There are ethical reasons why I cannot move my data all the way down to my dev environment and hand it over to my developers. And frankly, there are business protection reasons why. I mean, if we take, our, necessary proprietary information that our company has gathered up, hand it over to the dev team, they put it on their laptop, they carry it out of the building, and through no fault of their own, that laptop gets misplaced, we're now in trouble. We've got our proprietary information out there. So it's not simply a question of legality or ethics. It could actually get our business in trouble. So despite the fact that we, developers need, want, desire the Earth, Moon, and stars, we just can't give that to them. We've got to block you off. And it's not that we're mean, although we are, and it's not that we're jerks, although we are. It's that there are actually valid reasons. So the problem is, now what, right? You need this data. You need stuff to, we need to shift left, and that's acknowledged and accepted. But we can't, right? We need to deliver reliable test data. And what's reliable? Production, right? Production is reliable. That's what we're ultimately deploying to, is production. We need to have accurate test data. And what's reliable? Production. I mean, what's accurate? Sorry, production. And so we need data to scale in some cases, not every case. Again, not everybody needs, their 50 terabyte database for testing. We already know that it's going to be slow in some cases, and we'll have to deal with that in others. But most of the time, production's not that big, and most of the time, we're going to probably need that down in our dev, QA, and test environments, and so we're going to have to do that. Further, we need it fast. We need to be able to get this stuff quickly. We can't sit there and wait 2-3 days, 2-3 weeks, 6 weeks, longer. Development doesn't work in scales like that. Development works in hours, days, but certainly not weeks. And so we need to be able to get things down there quickly. Further, we either have to completely automate it, or we need to make it at least automatable. And all of this has to be shifted left. We've got to move this mechanism so that we can get at it, so we can get these processes going. And so now what, right? We're going to give them production data, but we can't. We need to give them this accurate data, but we can't. We need to move large data scales, but we can't. And we need to do it all fast, but we can't. All right, well, let's figure out how we can, right? Let's not say no. Let's say, okay, but, right? Let's say yes, but here are some mechanisms we're going to have to put in place. Now, I'm going to propose a series of tools that you can use individually or together to surmount these problems, to get past these issues so that we can shift left on our data, so we can move these things into our development environments. So let's talk about the mechanisms. Now, the first one I want to talk about is dynamic data masking. This is fairly new. It was introduced in 2014. It's a great tool, and it allows us basically to take our database and we can mask our data. and it's great. There's a lot of strengths to it. And obviously the biggest thing is that it works directly on our production data. So, it's, there we go, we're on production. It's got a security mechanism built in. I mean, it operates off of security immediately. So, I mean, that's great. And it's fast, and it's actually really pretty easy to set up and maintain. So, I mean, there's a lot of positives here. However, everything, has its opposite side, and so there are a few weaknesses. Now, this does nothing to address the size of your data. So if you're, if you're talking about a 50 terabyte database, we're still talking about a 50 terabyte database. Also, if you've got admin access down in your dev environments, which is not only likely but probable, you're going to be able to bypass this dynamic data masking thing. And also, it does mean that you're going to be moving production logins into your non-production environments. And that could be an issue if you've got your production environment in a separate domain, say, than your non-production environments, and there could be other issues around it. So while this has some very positive strengths, it does have a few weaknesses. Now let's go over and just play with it real quick, because, why not? Hopefully you can now see Management Studio. Any problems? Anybody screaming or yelling? Cool. Let me make sure I'm in the right database. And if we run this select statement, it's just a very simple select statement from the agents thing, we can see that we have Social Security numbers. I'll even zoom in a little bit for you so you can see these. Those are Social Security numbers. No, I just made these up. It's random. They're not real Social Security numbers, I hope. But if anyone spotted theirs, let me know and I'll delete it later. But we're going to add a very simple function to our column. We'll alter table, alter column, Social Security number, and we're going to add masked with function. Now the function I'm putting in is I'm starting at step 4 in the string, and then I'm putting X's in for everything else. There are other ways you could mask it. A lot of the examples online will show you masking everything but the last 4 of a Social Security number, but we all know that the last 4 numbers on a Social Security number are used frequently for identification, so why would we expose those? So I'm going to hide those from you, and we're going to run this little function. It's pretty easy. It just alters the table. Now, if I run my select statement again up here, I just want you to see that the results come back. I'm still seeing everything. Why? Well, because my login right now, I'm logged in as a DBO. I'm doing development. I'm modifying a database. And so it's not going to prevent me from seeing it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go right down here. I'm going to create a new user, Tim. All right. Now I'm going to use a little function called without login, so I can just create a local user. And I'm going to grant select on user on Tim to DBO agent. All right. So once we get that executed, we can then execute as the user Tim, run our same select statement, and then revert. And the revert puts us back to being my login again. So I'll run this, and the results come back. And now you see we have masked data. So that little function, I started at step 4, right? I started at the first dash, 1, 2, 3, 4. I started that first dash and then substituted X's. So now my Social Security numbers are masked off. And anybody who logs in that does not have superior access will be blocked. Although we can also set the users up. Hang on, I'm going to zoom in just a little more because it looks kind of tiny to me. There we go. We can also set up another user. We're going to create a user called Sue. And I'm going to grant unmask to Sue. So when I run this, this is going to create the user Sue, and then I can execute as Sue and run the same query, and then the results come back this time. You'll see that we're actually not masking anymore. Oops. Hang on. Now you'll see. We're not masking anymore. We have now unmasked that data, so Sue can actually see the raw data. And so that allows us to do dynamic data masking. Now let's move left. Let's shift left. This is our first shift left. I'm going to back up my database. It's a very tiny database, so it's going to run pretty quick on the backup. The restore is not going to run that fast, but it'll run fast enough. Create a new database called staging. So now we've shifted left for the first time. So if I use staging, and now if we run the same queries as before, the results come back. I've now got masked data in my shifted left environment, but only for as long as I'm using the same logins and the same security setup as I have inside of my production environment. So if I've got the thing set up for production in my non-production environments using the security from production, this works great. If not, this will break down. So if I have SA privileges inside my server, or if I have DBO privileges inside my database, the dynamic data masking is a weakness, not so much a strength. So it's something you'll have to keep an eye on, but it does give us one mechanism, one of many tools that we're going to use today to allow us to walk through and get this shift left process going. All right, let's move on to the next tool. Now, DBCC Clone DB. Now, this thing is great. This is 2016. Was introduced in, I believe, what was it? SP2 or Cumulative Update 2? CU2, I think. If I'm wrong, someone just, send that information out and correct me. But anyway, it's great. It's got nice things. The strengths, it is lightweight, it is fast. Once again, this is extremely easy, and it is teeny tiny. So it is solving the size issue. We're talking about moving stuff around much, much faster because it's small. Now, the weaknesses here is that, frankly, there isn't any data. This is a really cool new tool that allows us to create a copy of our database, moving the database, moving the structures inside the database, and even the security, but only moving the statistics, not moving the data. Now, why would this be handy? Well, this is great for doing query tuning, performance tuning, different kinds of mechanisms around your processing, because it's going to act like it has data, even though it has no data in it. It's a fantastic mechanism for query tuning. So a very fantastic mechanism for the shift left methodology, except that you can't do any data. And also, by the way, if you do updates to it, it's first update you do, it's going to cause it to do a statistics update. It's going to notice that there is no data in the table or index or whatever gets updated, and everything goes away, which it really kind of stinks. So another weakness is that it can still expose some information. I'm going to show you that when we get to the demo, which we're going to do right now. Now, clone database, again, it's very simple. I'm going to do DBC clone database, movie management, and I'm going to make movie management copy. Now, this isn't so much a shift left in this case. This is just more or less a straight up copy of the database that we're going to create. So I run this query. Takes a couple of seconds, no big deal. And let's go over here and refresh my database list, shall we? As soon as I can find it. There we go. And so now you'll see, once I zoom in so you can actually see, we've now got movie management copy, and it is marked read-only. So this was created as a read-only copy of our database automatically by the DBCC clone database. So let's first turn on execution plans. Let's notice I've got my little notes here telling me what to do because I'm not that bright. And we're going to run a query. And that's against the movie management copy. So we are now in the movie management copy. We run a really simple select count query, and it brings back an execution plan. Now, the execution plan is not anything shocking. It's an index scan with some stream aggregates because we did a group by, which is the count, and it put it all together for us. Here's where it gets interesting. Let's right-click and take a look at properties. I'll pin this so it stays in place, and then we'll zoom in. Now, notice the cardinality. Table cardinality is 1,000. Now, you'll notice if we zoom back out and take a look at the results, what's our actual result set? Well, the number of rows we have in the table is 0, but the execution plan is created against a table, let's look at it one more time, that has a cardinality of 1,000. Well, that's great. So now from a query tuning standpoint, from a generating execution plan standpoint, from a dev and test standpoint, I've got behaviors similar to my production environment. It's simulating me having production data, except that I've hidden all the production data by leaving it behind. Now, granted, you're going to need to do data in some places. Now let's take a look at this query. I'm going to go back to my regular movie management database. I'm going to run this query. And the results come back, and I've got a couple of rows, and that's great. And you don't worry about the data too much. And it generated an execution plan. It's a clustered index scan, a clustered index seek, a nested loop join, a compute scalar operator, and a select statement. Nothing surprising, nothing exciting. But let's run the same query against that movie management copy database. Right? The results come back, nothing, as expected. The execution plan comes back, but we have an issue. And the issue is simple. This has no statistics. Why? Because we ran a query against a column that had no statistics on it. In a normal database, it would go and create those statistics. This is a read-only database with no data. Therefore, it was unable to create those statistics. That's going to be an issue for any kind of other query that we do. Now, I can show you how it works. We're going to use master and drop that database and then recreate it and rerun it. And when the execution plan comes back this time, you'll notice that we do in fact have those statistics. Why? Because we recreated the database from the original, and therefore we've got those statistics in place, and off we go. You can create backups of these copy databases, of these DBCC clone DB databases, clone database databases. So we can create a backup of it, and it's going to be very quick because there's no data here at all. And then we can restore this, and the restore is not real quick, but it's quick enough, right? It says a little over a second, but that was more than a second. I know it was more than 3 seconds even. Here's my issue with this, and this is my only issue. If I then run a query against my query store data, all of my query store information is there. Now, you may think that's no big deal, except for the fact, let's zoom in a little bit. We can see every query. So even non-parameterized queries are going to have all of the select statements, all of the values in here. I could be violating the law by exposing this to my development environment. This could be a massive, massive data breach right here. So you need to be very, very cautious about using this as a mechanism for communicating your data. The good news is there are 2 ways you can get around it. One, you could just clear your query store prior to running this. However, that's a production system. We don't really want to mess with it. We're collecting the query information there for a reason. So the other option we have is to run clone database, movie management, to a new copy of the database with no query store. Now that will move it over. And I just spotted a typo. Oh, it looks, oh, I did a copy and paste. Cool. So my typo got copied and pasted everywhere. Cool. That makes things easy. That explains why all my tests ran fine this morning. And so the results come back this time, and we have no query store information. So we have removed the query store information from our clone database. So this is something I would strongly recommend if you're looking at moving this kind of stuff around for any kind of shift left methodology, that you make sure you use that with no query store if you're moving a production system away, so that you avoid exposing that information. I'll just add this in because since we're on a clone database, might as well talk about it. You can do a clone database and not move the statistics at all. Works fine. I'm not sure why you would do this, because what this is doing is basically moving the database, right? It's almost the same thing as doing a database export, except that what it's doing, it's over here. Let's go back over here and refresh. Come on, baby. And you will see that it's created a read-only copy of the database over here. So we've got the stats-free copy of the database now. I'm not excited about that one, but it does work. Now let's go back to our slides. So custom data. Now this is another mechanism that we could use for shifting left. It's not exactly the same thing as literally shifting left with our data. What we're talking about is just creating an empty database inside of our QA environment or inside of our dev environment and then loading data into it. Now it's safe, right? Because we're talking about custom data. Now this may be data generated from dev, it may be data copied from dev, maybe data generated from a third-party tool. But you know, it's going to be very, very safe because of that, because it's generated data. It's not production data unless you're doing, you know, your custom data as a copy of production data, which in case don't do that. It's safe. It's going to be very quick or relatively quick depending on how much data we want to load. If you want to load a 5 terabyte system, it's probably going to take longer, but you know, that's your choice. It's going to be relatively small and it's directly under your control. So that's a huge strength, right? Knowing exactly what you're deploying, exactly how, exactly when is very exciting. Now the weaknesses that it runs into, main one is maintenance. As you add a column to a table, you're going to have to modify your custom data load script. That sucks, right? Because you're not just adding a column to a table, you're adding 15 or 20 tables. You're modifying those tables, you're modifying other tables. There's a lot of work going on very quickly in a development environment. And so that's going to cause you some issues. You're going to hit some issues there. So it's going to slow things down, it's going to cause some problems. And also the inaccuracy. You're not necessarily going to get a distribution that matches production. You know, and by distribution, I mean, you know, statistical distribution of your data. You know, the fact that London has 400 rows while Mentor only has 2 is a statistical distribution that's important inside of testing and processing. You just don't want to have to expose the values in a non-production environment. So you're going to hit some inaccuracies there that you would not hit while, you know, in that pick up and shift left approach. But, you know, it's something we're going to deal with. Now, the thing is here, I got a trick I'm going to show you that makes this, I won't say easy, but easier. All right. Let's scroll on down. Now for custom data, we're not going to do queries. I'm cheating. I'm going to PowerShell. Now I've got a PowerShell module. In this case, what I'm doing is I'm going to use a couple of Redgate tools. I'm going to use SQL Compare and SQL Data Generator. Now the SQL Compare, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to compare to a backup. So I've got a backup of production. I'm going to run a compare against a backup of production, and then I'm going to create the scripts to recreate the production database with no data. So it's a great way to get a copy of production easy. What should you be doing? You should have everything in source control. You should be deploying everything from source control. You should be using the development mechanisms, again, from DevOps and a DevOps approach. You use the same development mechanisms for deployments in this case as you would in others. However, a lot of us are moving the opposite direction, right? Shift left is literally something we're moving left. So in this case, I'm going to now move down to QA. So we've already created a staging environment. Now we're going to create a QA, an integration testing environment. So I've got SQL Compare. That's going to compare my backup to a blank database. And I've got SQL Data Generator that's going to generate a bunch of fake data for me really quick and easy. I'm connecting up to my particular SQL instance. My database name is Movie Management QA, and then I've got my backup source. So I pass in all these arguments and then run the command to get that back. And then I create a database, my blank database, and the database name, of course, is Movie Management QA, and then I'm going to run all the compares. So this is going to be relatively quick. It's not going to be rocket fast because it has to generate and move data. So let's run this, and the script is running. Nothing read yet. That's always great. So it's registering the data sources. It's running the compare. It's going to generate and build the database. It's going to create the T-SQL. It's going to deploy the changes. And then it lists out all the changes it deployed. And it is a full database, including my users, Sue and Tim, and another user I haven't mentioned, Posh. And so you see that going by. Then it's going to generate all the data, move all the data across, and then it's going to complete. And so that's a pretty quick way to move over some test data. So we've got a bunch of stuff. Let's switch back over to here, and we can use this database and select over and run the query to retrieve our data. And so now we got all that data back, and we've got data in our database. It's test data. Now movie named, movies named, what is this, Floyd 31. It's probably not a very good movie, especially compared to Ruth 9. Anyway, you get the idea. We've generated data. That's not what production looks like. This is huge, useful tool. It's fast, it's controllable, but it's not production. So let's go back to the slides again for a minute and talk about what most of us do. Most of us do this. Most of us do direct data masking. It's what we do, it's how we do it, it's how we get the job done. And so what do I mean by direct data masking? I mean that we modify our tables. We do a restore of our production environment to somewhere. We then clean that data, and then we provide that clean copy out to our development environments. It's how the majority of us are getting this job done. Why? Because it is probably the most efficient mechanism. Now, the strengths here, this is production. We're going to move over stuff. It's going to have distributions very, very similar to production. We've got very tight control over exactly how we do it because we can decide which fields get masked when and how. We have direct control over it, and we're modifying the data directly, so it's completely under our control. It's secure because we're going to make darn sure it is secure. We've got the mechanisms in place to remove logins, add logins, delete data that shouldn't be there, insert data that needs to be, do the whole thing our way. That's the whole strength of it. It's our way. We get to do it. Now the weakness is this is slow, especially if we're talking 5, 10, 20 terabyte databases. This is slow. My little example database, yeah, it's quick, right? But I'm talking about 1,000 rows in a table. Most of our production systems don't look like that. It's 1,000 million rows in a table, and so it's slow. Size is also an issue. You're going to be seeing things slow down because you're making 4, 5, 8, 32 copies of your production database. This gets very, very, very headachy. And just like maintaining a custom data script, you've got to maintain this direct data masking. Now, there are some mechanisms out there, and we're going to talk through that help you solve most of this. It's not going to help you solve all of it. You're still going to have to do a lot of scripting. You're going to have to, as I put it, automate all the things. There's going to be a lot of work here that you have to go through and get it done. But let's step back over here and take a look at it. So as I say, I've got some tools. We're going to go back over to PowerShell because, again, automate all the things, right? So I'm going to look at my manual masking module here. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be cheating just a little bit. Let's just move this to here. And let's bring this up. So what I'm doing this time is, again, I'm cheating. I freely admit it. If you're not cheating, you're not fighting. That's just how it goes. So I'm cheating here, and I'm going to use SQL clone from Redgate Software. And what I'm doing, again, in my PowerShell over here on the right, I'm going to set up my clone server. I know where that is. I'm going to connect to SQL clone. I'm going to go and get my backups again. I'm taking advantage of my backups. Why? Because I don't want to connect directly to my production server. This is about protection, right? We're going to use, like we use compare against the backup, we're going to use clone against the backup. We're going to stay away from touching the production server directly. I'm going to spit out an image, what's called an image, and you see one over here called good morning. And by the way, good morning. Anyway, and I'm going to create it off a database called movie management. Now first I'm going to create this clone image. I'm going to set it, and then I'm going to create a new clone off that image called movie management dirty. Now from there I'm going to connect up to that database and again use invoke SQL command, again PowerShell, automate all the things. I'm going to run queries. I'm going to get my email addresses, and we don't do a lot of searches on email addresses, but we may want to do testing against our email address. So I'm going to set my email addresses to equal noemail@example.com, right? All my email will be noemail@example.com. Also, I'm going to get rid of that production user Sue because we don't want her in the non-production environment, so I'm going to drop that user. And so I'm going to run those two commands to clean my database. Granted, Your scripts are going to be infinitely more complex than this. This is just meant as an example to show you what's going on. But you will have to build the scripts. The question that frequently comes up is like, well, how do I build those scripts? And the shortest possible answer is like eating an elephant. You're going to do it one bite at a time, one script at a time. Find one thing that you need to fix, Social Security. Another thing you need to fix, email, and add them to the script and begin cleaning them up. And then do that through, you know, a whole series of stuff until you've got a massive set of scripts that do the data cleansing. This step will be slow. There's no getting around it. This is going to be a slow step. Next, I create a new image for my clean database. So I create this new cloned image. You'll see it over here on the left when we run the script. And then from there, I'm going to create multiple development environments. Yes, it's PowerShell. Yes, doing a while loop is not how you get PowerShell done, but it's easy in this case for this example. I'm going to spit out 9 databases real fast. And so I'm going to start at 1, stop at 10, and create 9 different databases using clone. And then I'm going to clean up. I'm going to get rid of my copy of the production data. So it's no longer on a server. It's no longer accessible to anyone. I'm not exposing my production information. This is a very important step for me. I don't want to leave production data laying around, so I get rid of it. So let's just run the script, see how it goes. Tested it several times today, tested it several times yesterday. It's all been running great, so let's hope it keeps running. So you'll see over on the left, it's already created the movie management clone image. It created a clone. The clone took a split second. The clones are very, very fast. It's cleaned my data. It's now creating a new image, movie management clean. This takes a little longer than a backup. In this case, in most cases, it takes about the same amount of time as a backup. And then it's going to create 9 different clone databases. They're going to take about 1.5 seconds each, approximately. It's taken 3 right now, which is a little longer than it normally does. Maybe running this test over and over again isn't conducive to my system. So it's gotten to 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And then you'll see the movie management go away. Let's go. Hurry up. That took longer than it ought to have. All right, you see movie management go away because I've cleaned up that production copy. I've removed that, got it out of my way. I don't want to see that kind of stuff anymore. It's gone. And so now what I've got is I've got the movie management clone. It's very small, and I've got 9 different clones from it, and you can see each one of these clones. And notice, I'm going to zoom in just because it's really worth pointing out, the image itself is 832 megabytes, okay? So that's not very big. It's a very small database, and this is about the same size as an uncompressed backup. And so it's created that, but notice the clone sizes. These are only taking up 42 megabytes each. That's because what we're doing is we're doing a mount to a virtual disk, and we're looking at the movie management clean image to read our data, and any writes are occurring locally. But all we need to do to establish that database is hold a little stub together, you know, the 42 megabytes here, from almost 1 gig down to 42 megabytes. That's a giant, giant savings in size and in speed. So this is going to be fast. You know, granted, this wasn't quick today, but that 3 to 5 seconds, it does that for hundreds of gigs, let alone, you know, this one little 1 gig database. It does it very, very fast. Now let's go back over to here and take a look at this. Now we've got our first database here, use Movie Management Dev 1, so it's our first development environment. If I execute the queries, oops, I didn't follow my own instructions. Turn off, see where it says here, turn off execution plans? Yeah, I didn't do that. So I got an error. Why? Because Tim does not have permission to run execution plans. So the results come back, and you'll see that the dynamic data masking is still in place. We put it in earlier. It's still there. So we're going to be able to see in our non-dev environments, in our shifted, non-production environments, in our shifted left environments, we're going to see behavior the way it is in production. So we're not dependent on trying to rebuild these things. We're moving production into a shifted left place. This is great, great stuff. Now let's move over to another database. Let's use Movie Management 2, and let's update data. Right? Let's change the data. I'm going to go where agent ID is equal to 42. I'm going to change the email address. Oops, did I miss the revert? I did. Hang on. My bad. Right. I'm going to change the email address to grant@scarydba.com. And so now if we take a look at the same query, and this again is in a different database. We're now in management database management 2. Let's take a look. Movie Management Dev 2. We can now see that I've modified the data. So email address is now this. Now remember, we're reading off of the image. We're not reading directly off the database. So if I move to another database, right? So I'm going to move from 2, where I was, Movie Management Dev 2. I'm now going to move to Movie Management Dev 6, just picking a number. I'm going to execute as Tim again. I'm going to run the exact same query. Now in this case, would you expect I would see the modification I made to the data? Well, no. In fact, what you're going to see is the data is still in place. Why? Because data, because data modifications are done locally, not to the image. All the reads are done to the image first, then the local data, and so I've bypassed all that issue. So now what I've got is, let's zoom back out here. Let's go over to here. Let's refresh. So I've created 9 different development environments, all that are only 42 megs in size, and all of them done very quickly, all of them done programmatically, completely automated. All of my developers now have a private environment in which to work, and they don't interfere with each other. One developer can do things, and he's not going to cause anything to break for other developers. This is gigantic. This is great. Further, this is clean data. This is production data, but it's a clean copy. So the developers are now looking at the data that they want, which is production data, but we've gone through and cleaned both the ethical and legal stuff that we have to have to ensure that what's down there is not, going to cause us problems. And if there is business information that we also need to remove prior to us giving this out to the developers, we can do that as well. All of it controlled. So now we've got something that is fast, small, controlled, and clean. Yes, you're still going to have to maintain your scripts. Yes, your scripts are going to take however long they take to run. But most of the problem has been solved, a big, big, big chunk. And frankly, we're working on some of the other chunks right now. So let me make sure I've got all my scripts. I'm not going to clean up just yet in case we have questions during the question period. All right. So automate all the things, everyone, please. So hopefully we hit these goals. I mean, my whole idea here is I want to shift left. I want to support my dev teams. I believe in this whole process of DevOps. And so I absolutely need to move my data in a protected fashion into my non-development environments. Some further reading I suggest. These links are all available in the slides. I assume these slides are being distributed by Pass, but if not, I will put them up on slideshare.net after 24hop. But there's a whole bunch of things talking about DevOps and the concepts of shift left. I mean, it's vital, right? It's not simply me talking about stuff. This is absolutely an important part of what you do when we start talking DevOps. So I just put my contact information up one more time. Please, 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 if you want to ask me any questions about this, query tuning, or any other fun stuff, you've got my email address, you've got my Twitter handle. Get in touch. Let's talk. Those are my photo credits. The Jeep is mine, not the wreck, but the other one. And so, do we have any questions?
Thank you, Grant. Wonderful presentations. I like the one we started. Fail early, fail more often in development.
Yeah,
Thank
in
you.
development. Fail in development. We don't want to fail in production.
All right. So just for everyone, we have plenty of questions like Grant indicated. We will get to them. But if he couldn't, he will be able to get to all of them offline. So starting with the top, be aware, I believe it looks like a statement, but I'll read it to you. Be aware that dynamic data masking don't prevent a regular user to use aggregated functions on the column, and in that way, able to figure out actual values.
Oh, can they? Okay, cool. Did not know that. Great statement. Again, I don't think dynamic data masking is the be-all, end-all. I think it's, again, Microsoft's probably going to make changes to it. They're going to improve it over time. I think it's one of many tools that we use. It's not the only tool.
All right. Some of them look like more like a statement, but I'll read that for everyone's benefit. Grant, since the statistics come with the clone, do you see, this is a question, do you see DBCC clone database being useful for monitoring performance of client DBs over time?
So for monitoring performance, no, only because it gets you statistics and it will allow you to do query tuning for your client systems because you're going to get similar behavior to what you would see on the client systems. And that's great, but it's not going to do performance monitoring because you're not moving the data around. And so you're not seeing how many pages you're hitting and how much stuff is moving across and how fast the network is and how's the server configured and blah, 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 blah. All the stuff around, around full-on performance is non-existent.
Excellent. The next one, in the clone DB, wouldn't the statistics contain values in the histogram such as social security numbers?
Well, yeah, actually the histograms could contain values as well. So that might be why you would want to do but if you do the clone DB without statistics, then it's sort of a waste of time. Yeah, that's another possible vector for information I had not thought of. Thank you for bringing that up. But yes, that does exist. So there is another potential issue there.
All right, the next one is really, where can I find more information about SQL clone?
www.red-gate.com/SQL clone. Or if you just go to the Redgate homepage, it's right there, redgate.com, and it's right there on the homepage. Can't miss it.
Very good. So the next question is really, can we have the scripts to practice on our own so that we can fail early?
Yes, I have not published these scripts anywhere, but I will. I will put them, at least initially, I will put them at scarydba.com/resources, and I will see if there's other places that I can put them. But I will put them at scarydba.com/resources. They're not there now, but they will be today.
Wonderful, Grant. I guess, something came right away. Is SQL clone a freeware or a commercial product? Yes.
SQL clone is, yeah, I'll answer that one. SQL clone is absolutely a commercial product. It is something for sale. It's several years of development gone into it, and it's for sale. It's not a freebie.
Very good. I guess that comes to the end of the Q&A session.
Wow. Okay. We got about 2 minutes left.
Yeah, good timing. And
okay.
I wanted to bring up what is coming up next, which is really hackers.
Right.
There you go. Hackers move away. We are always encrypted, and that's by Ronaldo Keyball. And I want to take a moment to thank you, Grant, and also thank everyone for your attention and bringing all your curiosity questions for this event. And that brings to the end of today's event. About 24 hours have passed, protecting production data in non-production environments. Thank you, Grant.
Thank you. Thanks for everybody for attending.